Okay, hello everyone. This is another interview, and I have got Sarah Lindsay on the phone, and I know her through the group on Facebook called ASD Village, and she is a very good soul. She's been there to help me at times when I've been down, and it says a lot about her character, who she is. So I want to have you introduce yourself, Sarah. Just tell us.
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm 22. I'm not diagnosed as autistic. I've actually gone through a process where I wasn't diagnosed. We can talk about that later. And yeah, I figured it out in January of this year.
Yeah. Wow. That's January. That's when I figured mine out. The 2nd of January. You know, I sort of half joked myself that I'm going to start celebrating January 2nd as my birthday.
That's funny. I think mine was like a couple weeks after that, but I remember the exact moment where I figured it out. Do you remember the exact moment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. That's what we were talking just a little bit before we turned the camera on, and I asked her. She said, I had asked her if in her gut she knows, and because looking back on the diagnosis is nice, but and you'll reach a point where you'll realize it doesn't really matter what you call it, because you have found an important key to your life. Let's see. So you're a 22-year-old. What led you to even suspecting to look into this? I mean, you're so lucky at 22 you did this.
It's really funny because for a lot of years, one of my favorite books was The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I don't know if you've read that or heard of it.
No.
It's about an autistic young boy, but they don't really ever say that he is autistic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you Google it, you can figure it out.
Okay.
But I've always been drawn to books and movies about autistic characters. I never really thought that I could be on the spectrum, and I think a lot of that is it's usually young boys that are really interested in math and science, which isn't me. But I figured it out when I started watching this show on Netflix called Atypical. Have you seen that?
No.
No? Oh, you should watch it.
I live in a little box.
Yeah, you do watch it. But he's also a white young male, but I still found so many similarities between me and him, so I started looking it up and researching specifically autism in females.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found a bunch of these videos by autistic young females on YouTube, and that's when I figured it out. This could be me. This makes sense. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it presents so differently in females compared to males. I wrote a paper about it, but...
You said that it presents itself differently if you're male, you said?
Yeah, males and females.
Yeah. That is fascinating. I need to... and there's not a whole lot that I've seen about males. I mean, maybe I haven't researched it. Was that true then? You haven't found it?
I mean, just in movies, it's always one character. It's usually a guy that's kind of robotic and not really having any eye contact, and they're always into math and science, like Sheldon Cooper or Rain Man.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And just in girls, it's so different because we are I guess more social, and we just learn how to mask and pretend. We're so good at pretending to be neurotypical.
Yep.
And mimicking other people without even realizing that we're doing it.
Yeah. That I since most of the information on the internet it seems to be women who are writing and so the information I was getting was sort of the female perspective, but I still related.
Really?
Well, I mean,
that's interesting.
No, I'm not talking about research. Now, there may be a whole body of research that's all male, but I'm talking about going to the first forum I guess it was a blog I went to was I can't remember the name of it, but it was by a woman that had set it up, and so I was reading those perspectives, and it didn't matter. I mean, I sent my sister it was on YouTube. They had it was like female Asperger traits or something it's called. And it's a series of just still photos, and then they put a list on each photo. And it's probably 3 minutes long. So, I mean, it is a huge list of traits. And I think I can probably relate to 80%. I mean, and that's pretty good because not everybody's, even the females may not be even 80%, But so it seems like, I haven't seen, that's one reason I kind of did my channel, because there's a number of guys, there's a couple guys in the UK that are doing about Asperger's and their own traits and stuff. And I just took another twist and went sort of the whole process of me discovering, just in the process of even accepting and figuring out that I was on the spectrum. And I still, at some degree or in some level, struggle with realizing it and accepting it. It's still new.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking about how there's like stages of grief, anger, denial, acceptance, and I feel like when you figure out that you're autistic, you also go through that.
Yes.
I feel like I'm going through that now. I don't know where I am. But
well,
I think I still struggle with the acceptance.
Yep. Well, the stages of grief, you kind of go around and around. You don't just go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Because, I've been on the last probably 2-3 months thinking about masking, which is really, to me, the meat of it, because what you've done all of your life is you've said, I'm not going to be this, I'm going to try to be this. And you're constantly fighting what you're really feeling and wanting to be, and there was a lot of, because I've got a whole lifetime to look back on. You probably feel like, oh my gosh, you're 22 and you're just figuring this out, but wow, what I wouldn't give to be able to look forward and say, okay, now I might be able to figure out what was going on with the relationships, what was going on with career choices and all those things. And it's just, I'm not bitter. I just wish it had been that way, but I'm actually finally feeling like I can let go of this search or this sort of attention of going, what's going on? Why? So anyway, yeah, it's interesting too how this process doesn't matter your age. Everybody seems to, the experience is so similar.
Yeah. I just remember the day I figured it out. I remember where I was. I remember just feeling so happy and so free, and I wanted to go to like everybody, like all the strangers on campus, and just be like, I figured it out finally. Like, this is me.
Yeah. I know.
It was so freeing.
And it's, I'm trying to think of the first person I told. Where's the first person I told? I think it was my sister. And her immediate response was, because, see, I always thought this was related to family dynamics. I had a father that was oppressive and controlling and all that, and I always thought it was related to that. And you keep finding excuses for why you are what you are. And so I just kind of said, okay, well, it's that. And when I told her that, she's actually started going through like a therapy in the last 10 years because she's still struggling with stuff. I think she's on the spectrum. She's not willing to open her eyes up to that possibility, and I'm not pushing it. But when I said something to her, it was sort of like, well, are you sure it's not just depression? And she didn't say that exactly, but it was like, no, and
she didn't believe you.
Yeah, I was just, it's like
that. Yeah.
So
pretty much everyone I've told doesn't believe me. They're like, oh, you're just socially anxious, or no, you can't be, or I don't know, like autistic people can't have empathy and you have empathy, and there's just so much misinformation, and it was really invalidating, 'cause most people don't really understand what autism is, because all they know about it is like, what they see in TVs and movies, and like nonverbal, and people who like, I don't know, they're just, I don't have anything in common with, or not anything, but very different.
Well, I've had two two reactions that I'm going to bring up. One was actually it's my longest and oldest friend, and his son was born autistic. He's also Down syndrome, and he's got so he has a lot of other complications going on, and he's one of the people I told. And I mean, he was very positive. Matter of fact, his wife works with. She is deaf. She's at a deaf school. She's a teacher, an excellent teacher, and she's worked with that population. And she said, "Well, I'll have her talk with you about this." And it never happened. I actually, in that time period, got the diagnosis. But I may be completely off on this, but I almost kind of sense there's a doubt there. It's like, and I say this because I wrote on a forum, introduced myself and said, yeah, blah, 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 and just diagnosed. And a woman wrote back basically saying, well, you've gone 60 years and your traits are light enough that you didn't notice. So, how can you even call yourself autistic when I have a son that can't even take care of himself? It was like, and I really understand it because one, their view of autism is their kids, their
Right.
friends that have kids like that. And another experience I had, I don't know if you saw the one video I did where I went out in the county fair, and the lady I was talking to, she was in a concession stand. She was, she actually started crying, saying, I've never seen adults. I have no idea what's going to happen to my child. And she was like relieved to see an adult that doesn't like evaporate or something once they get to a certain age, And so it made me really realize how misunderstood autism is by everyone.
Yeah.
It really is. Even my cat down here.
I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, have you heard the saying, like, if you meet one person who's autistic, you met one person?
Right.
I think that's so important because we're all just so different. And
yes.
I don't know. I remember I was in group therapy, and this girl, every time I talked about, like, trying to get my diagnosis, she would just kind of, like, tune out and not listen. And, like, the leaders of the group were like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't really listen to this autism stuff because, like, I'm just thinking about my nephew and, like, how different there is from them. And it's just so invalidating because even though we're verbal and we're very different, like,
yeah,
we still struggle and we're still autistic,
Yeah. Have you ever watched, Agony Audio out of the UK, Sarah? She's another Sarah.
Oh, yeah, Agony Audio. Yeah, I love her.
Yeah, I know. I think she's doing an incredible service.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm there's so much when I think about her that comes to mind as far as, she just did a vlog on having a meltdown, but which took me off of what I was originally going to say and why I brought her up. But she's been a wonderful exposure. How am I going to put it? I've learned so much from her. I'm learning so much still about myself, and I don't know if you feel this, but I have masked for so long that I'm not even sure what I feel physically and emotionally.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I don't even know really when I'm asking or when I'm not.
Yeah.
Really.
As you get more in tune with what autism is and how it expresses itself in people like us, because there seems to be a group of people a lot like us. I mean, I don't have meltdowns. I mean, at least I can never remember one as a kid. I am starting to suspect, though, that I'm having reactions. Gosh, this is embarrassing to say. I know that, like at work, if I'm working and something comes in to break my routine, it is like somebody kicked me in the stomach. I mean, or not physical pain, but I just get so upset. I mean, and I notice that even around home here, I can put something, I'll put something in my hand and I'll carry it to someplace else while I'm doing something else, and I'll lose it. I'll lose it. I'll lose the piece physically, but then it's like, okay, where is it? It's not here. It's not here. And it's almost like a panic. And I don't know if that's related. And so all these questions come up about, you go, okay, well, is this something related to being on the spectrum? Or is this just because I'm crazy? Or is this, it's quite go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I don't know, me dealing with, like, depression and anxiety, I think that is just confusing. When I have these experiences where I think I'm having a meltdown or I think I'm misunderstanding something, or if I'm nervous about something, is it because of my autism, because of anxiety? But, like, you can't really, I guess, separate it, I guess, because I'm one person, so it all affects me, and I can't really separate one thing affecting me versus another. Well, it all affects me all at the same time. So.
Yeah. I think this is sort of the conclusion I'm coming to, and that is that neurodiversity is, I mean, you're not both. You're either one or the other. You're either neurotypical or you're neurodiverse. And so that when you start saying, well, is this neurodiverse quality? Is this a neurotypical quality? I think it's very confusing because you can't be both. And I always want to express, like when I brought up Sarah or Agoniati, was that I go, well, I'm not like that. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that misled me 4 years ago when a coworker was talking about her son, and I was like so connected to what she was talking about, his traits. But then when she would talk about specifically, what they were doing, it's like, well, I don't think I had that. I haven't had that level of socialization problem. So I thought, well, this isn't me. This is something you're being crazy, But when I started having problems at work, and I was really desperate for saying, okay, now what the heck is going on? Because I had a huge communication breakdown, and I could feel it. I could feel it for the first time, just like there is something wrong here, and this isn't just a communication breakdown. And that's when I started looking back at Asperger's.
Yeah. Would you say you're highly empathetic?
Oh, too, yeah. I can remember a day actually when I said, I because I used to be, this is where I used to confuse the pressures and the feelings I had at home and thinking it was my father causing all this. But I felt so scrutinized by people. I felt so, I felt so judged, and so that they were, that I was so in tune with what people were doing that it wasn't worth being around people. It was just like, I can't relax. I can't enjoy this. I mean, I feel like I'm naked standing in front of people, and it's just like, oh my, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started isolating myself probably 10, 15 years ago, of just like, okay, I don't need to do that, so I'm not going to do this anymore. How about you?
Yeah. I think it's interesting that people say people that are autistic have no empathy, because it seems like we're all so hyper empathetic.
Yeah.
Like, I can feel the mood in the room without even, like, talking to somebody. And it's really interesting now realizing, like, that I am different from other people, and then also realizing, like, because I'm so empathetic, it's because I'm so, like, in tune with others' emotions. Like, I can feel when they just, like, I don't know, just when they're, like, uncomfortable. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yes.
I've been noticing it more and more, like, just how people treat me differently, just like very, very subtle things.
Yes. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Sometimes I wish I wasn't so aware, because I wish I wasn't so aware sometimes, because I'm so, like, hypercritical of myself. And, like, just the smallest thing, smallest tone of voice, like, it makes you, like, doubt yourself so much.
Absolutely. Well, I know that when I grew up, I had no self-esteem. I had no self-respect. I actually went the opposite direction and thought there's something wrong with me. Basically, life is a punishment. I mean, it was not good. And and we carry that basically through life. And I think I will say this though, that our sensitivities are a double-edged sword. Where there are positive things to this too, but it's I guess I don't know what changed. I don't know if I learned to ignore feelings. I shut down a lot. I know that I did. That's one of the things I'm trying to do now, is get back in touch with what I really feel, and physically and emotionally. So that's my, what want to say? That's my challenge now, is getting back in touch. And it's been going back through memories. It's just stuff comes up all the time. I can be working in the kitchen, and I remember doing something as a kid and going, and it was some incident that I remembered or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah. Well, what I guess you're in school now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, how is that going?
It's going okay. I transferred schools last year, and I changed majors.
Okay.
And I don't know. I kind of want to change my major, but I'm graduating next year.
Cool.
I'm studying communications right now, but I've always been interested in psychology.
Okay.
And I think, realizing that I'm on the spectrum has made me, realize that I am really passionate about helping other people.
Good.
And just making people more aware of actually what autism is.
Yeah.
So, I want to do something with that for my job. So,
yeah, I
I'm
can
sure I
understand.
could with my major, but, I want to have a job where I'm, really passionate about it. So, I don't know if I'll go to school after I graduate. I don't know.
Yeah. You're going to go, you're graduating with a 4-year degree?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you could, I think you could take some undergraduate courses and get up to speed in psychology probably, and then. Yeah. That's that'd be great if you get into it, because I was fortunate to have a counselor that was ADD, and she had a daughter that originally, the way she got into it, she was a counselor. Her daughter was diagnosed Asperger's. And as she started studying Asperger's, she started seeing some inconsistencies in her behavior. And so she started studying ADD and attentive, and just opened up a whole new world for her. And she just see the parallels. She said that she believes that the two are actually the same. They're just different expressions of the same group of whatever's going on. Yeah, they're that close. Because I said, come on, now I've heard that this is a characteristic of autism. Is that true of AD? Yep. And it's like, I mean, it was just like the stemming and everything. And so that's kind of thrown a confusing wrench in my figuring out what's going on. But at the same time, she said, well, they're both on the spectrum. So it's like.
Yeah.
So it's like.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. It just so that's I think our understanding of autism is at such a basic beginning level that I think what they're going to find in the years to come, people are just going to be I think it's going to be the spectrum will be so wide that there's not going to be a definite line between what we would call neurotypical and neurodiverse anymore. I mean, I think it's going to be, because if it's a change in the neurology, if it's change actually in the brain, you can have just one small little section of the brain that would then be different. An example that, and I don't know if this is accurate, but when I worked with deafblind, I worked with a lady, a young woman who was in a car accident and had injury to the back of her head, which is where the occipital lobe is. And her eyes, the optic nerve and everything, perfect. But the brain was damaged to where it could not interpret the signals, and as sight. But she still had, and this was so weird, she still had the ability to see red. She couldn't see light, she couldn't see form, she couldn't see shape, dimension, nothing spatial. But she noticed it when she was in the back of the car with her parents. She said, "Is there something red ahead?" And they're like, "Huh?" You know, and it was a billboard that was mostly red that they were passing. And it just was a lesson to me about how specific. When I have a degree in special education and special ed, K through 12, and I remember in one of the classes that we remember it was one of the students could read on the blackboard, but when she had to put her head down and read something on the desk, she couldn't read anymore. And I thought, wow, if that's the kind of subtlety of things that can happen with neurological differences, think of all the possibilities. No wonder everyone on the spectrum is different.
Yeah, I mean, we're all so unique, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to respond. That was such a great... I don't know how to respond.
It's what? I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Sorry. Oh, I just said I don't know how to respond.
Oh, no, that's all right. No, I'm just constantly, I guess that's all part of my process of trying to figure myself out, you know. So, let's see. What else about Sarah here? What do you hope? Okay. So first of all, you want to go for a diagnosis. You're in the process of trying to get that.
No, because I already went through it and I paid hundreds of dollars, and I don't know. I honestly don't really trust psychologists anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like they don't really grasp. A lot of them, not all of them. A lot of them don't understand really the spectrum of autism. So honestly, I think I was mostly going for the diagnosis so that other people would believe me.
Mm-hmm.
But now I just don't care anymore.
Yeah. No, I can understand that because if I'm trying to think of where it was. It was on one of the forums or whatever I was reading where I'm trying to think it was somebody made the comment that I think it was somebody's son that was being diagnosed, and the psychiatrist was saying, well, they have too good of eye contact. They can't be on the spectrum.
Yeah, that's what the psychologist said to me.
Wow. Isn't that
yeah. And she said I had made good eye contact and I had good conversational skills.
Yes.
Which, I don't know about that, but...
Well...
yeah, I just think she just... I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't think they really understand.
Well,
I mean, autism is... They've mostly studied it in males because... I mean, at first they thought it was primarily a male condition, so it's mostly studied in males. So they don't really understand the female presentation of it.
Mm-hmm.
So of course she's going to go off male symptoms.
Yeah.
And they don't match those. So. And also, I was masking during the whole process.
Yeah. You mean the exam?
Which I didn't even realize I was doing. So.
Yeah. What was I going to say here? I need to write down stuff because my mind goes a million different directions. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I'm sitting here just going, what were they going to say? No, it was about the fact that they diagnose. I know what it was. One of the things when I talked with my counselor, and she was saying there's a real big disappointment in their professional community that they lumped everything under autism spectrum disorder, especially with the Asperger classification, because... You mean
the doctors are disappointed?
As a professional group, the psychologists, the counselors, the clinicians that do diagnosis are like, wait a second, because they're basically calling it all autism, and that's confusing for everybody. But the one thing they did in the DSM-5 was they said, but you also have to take into account adults that are masking. And I don't think that's caught on. I think that's one of those things that you were saying, that a counselor really needs to have. The best is a counselor that is on the spectrum. That's the only person who really is going to understand it. And so I understand your frustration. I'm lucky. Yeah. I'm lucky I got the diagnosis I did, because I think part of it, honestly, was because I don't know how much they went into they talked to other people around you about, do you see this?
They talked to my mom.
Okay. That's it?
Yeah.
Basically?
Yep, that's it.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I know with kids, they'll talk to teachers, they'll talk with anybody and everybody they can get in to talk about. But with me, my parents have passed away. My sister lives 5 hours away. I suppose they could have called her, but I really don't know how much she could have helped. So basically it was an interview with the clinician and saying, okay, and she went through other related possible diagnoses and said, well, do you do this, do that? I said, no, I don't do that. It's okay, well, that eliminates this. And do you do this and this? And no. And I mean, this took about an hour and 20 minutes maybe. And that's all it was. So I sat down and interviewed with her, and she said, okay.
That was your whole process? An hour and 20 minutes?
That was, yep. And then she said, she said, if you want to, we can go through the diagnostic testing, but she said, that's not going to achieve any different results, I know. Because I think, and I kind of left mixed feeling about it, because I thought, well, is she doing this basically just to say, okay, let's save the system money, let's don't drag him through this? I don't think that's really what it was. When I was talking with Carol Bird, she was saying, wow, you had a person that was really on the ball, actually, because what was it we were talking about? She's, that she determined that my reaccounting of my past and my present was accurate. That it was consistent. You know what I mean? She went through, because she did take me through different perspectives that she could sort of test me and how accurate I was reporting to her. That I wasn't just saying, I want to be autistic, so I'm going to parrot these different things, and get the right response from you. And plus the fact, she was saying, if you want to go through the testing, but I think what she did end up doing is saving me probably about $1,500, $2,000. It's
crazy expensive.
Yes, it is.
It's ridiculous.
So, but the bottom line, and this is what I think you have come to the conclusion too, is that it's just, the diagnosis is just an opinion. Now, if they're able to do all these tests, and that supports the conclusion, then maybe that does validate it a little more. But I think what we know from our experience, and plus, you can't, when you're talking with all these people and they come up with all these things that you've never expressed to anyone, you've never talked about with anyone, and they're telling you the exact same thing, almost verbatim, that you would if you were to express it yourself. And that's what hit me. That's when I knew I found a very important key to my life, is that there was forum after forum of people that had this experience that have never, and it was just, it was life-changing. It literally was.
Well, I'm really glad you found a good psychologist that understands autism. Because mine, she interviewed me for an hour, and then she did the 4-hour test that they do with everybody, which was really interesting because it was words and math problems and games.
Okay.
I don't really understand how that is a criteria to diagnose somebody, but it's just this person judges you she spent 5 hours with me.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think she really believed what I was saying about myself.
Wow.
So I think that led to, I don't know, I just don't think she understood me at all. And
well, when I went into my evaluation, I was fully expecting a 3-day process. They do an intake, they do the examination, and then they do a summary, a conclusion. And so I was like, okay, this is step 1. And so and I know that first step is to eliminate possibilities. You know, that you're there. It's so that if they were doing other kind of testing that didn't seem relevant, it might have been exactly why they were doing those tests. It's like, okay, well, this isn't relevant and this isn't relevant. But if you don't have a person, like I remember when I went to my counselor, not the person that did the diagnosis, but I went later to a counselor, and it was so funny because she was saying, let's look at, she got the DSM-5 out and said, okay, let's start looking at the characteristics of attention deficit disorder. And she said, do you do this? And it's funny now, because after I left, and this is so typical of me, after I left that session, I started thinking about her questions in depth more. I'm going, oh, you know, I didn't answer that right. I had a chance to process it. But anyway, one of my answers was something like, well, I guess I don't know exactly what you're asking, because if you mean this, then I mean that, then I'd answer it this way. And she started laughing and said, oh, she said, the way you answered that told me so much more than the question I asked you. She said, that is so, you know, and we just kind of laughed about it. Well, and that's how the whole session was with her. Every time I went in was that we were two people from the same planet, and you could just feel it in each other. It's like one of those things where there's something deeper to the way we communicate, because yeah, we may say things in a strange way, but to us it's not strange, and there's purpose behind it. I mean, it was just so refreshing. And that's why, you know, you were saying you're possibly interested in going into psychology. It's like, oh, Sarah, please do, because you'd be a gift to the community, because it would eliminate just what you went through.
Yeah.
I hope you do.
My only thing about, I don't know, I thought about like becoming a counselor or social worker or something like that before, but
yeah, I
just feel like I'm so in tune and too empathetic with people that I would just like carry their problems around with me, and I would just be thinking about it all the time. Because like right now I'm a server in a restaurant, and I still like go home and I'm thinking about like, oh no, I disappointed my customers. Like I did this wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were talking about like not feeling, like trying to figure out how to feel, I don't know. I just feel like I have too many feelings.
You did what 2 minutes ago? I'm sorry?
I feel like I have too many feelings.
Oh,
like,
yes.
I wish I could turn them off sometimes.
Yeah.
And just stop thinking.
Well, I think that's a valid concern. Have you talked with any? There's a lady that is in Canada, Dr. Natalie Engelbrecht, and she herself is on the spectrum, and she does diagnoses, and she's a counselor. She might be an interesting person to talk to for you. I'll give you that information if you want later.
Oh, okay.
Natalie, yeah, Engelbrechet, or it's a very German spelled word, and I'm terrible with spelling words, so I got to look it up. But, I probably butchered it, and her name is probably Smith. Oh yes. So, I'm just. It's what. What now that you know, how do you think this is? How is this going to impact your life?
Well, I kind of touched on this before, but I'm so much more aware of just subtle. I have this thing with rejection. I think it's like my biggest struggle in my life, but like just very subtle things. I'm just so aware of the way people treat me versus other people, but also just realizing like when I miscommunicate, like why that is. Like, because my brain does work differently than other people's. And also, I kind of thought I was lazy all these years when I was dealing with executive function problems. Like, why it's so hard for me to just, like, get up and start doing something and go through the process.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's helped me, I guess, be kinder to myself, because I realized what's going on in my brain. And why simple things that are seemed easier for other people are harder for me.
Did when you were going through the diagnosis, did they say anything about ADD?
No, they didn't.
Wow. See, that's what my counselor picked up immediately. Well, of course, she, like I told you, she'd been through it with her daughter, who was first Asperger's diagnosed, and then she later went back and researched enough to go, and I don't remember if she was, because it's a comorbid, the comorbidity of Asperger's or of autism and ADD is extremely high. I mean, like 60%, I think, of the people with autism also have ADD, and it's like 40% of the people with ADD are on the spectrum or autistic.
Really?
Yeah. It was
interesting.
Really.
Because I feel like. Sorry, go ahead.
Feel like what? I'm sorry.
Sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, that's okay. You're not interrupting. Just go ahead.
Okay, I feel like there are some people that I know who are ADHD or ADD, and I just know that I connect with them so strongly, so that makes sense that, they're connected. But whenever I look up symptoms of ADD and ADHD, I don't feel like I quite fit. But also, that's the same with autism. I feel like I don't really fit what it says either, like in the book, the bullet point list. So, I don't know.
The two the two that she said are twins or the same is ADD and inattentive type, not the hyperactive or what is it? Hyperactive and avoid. I don't remember. There's a third, but check into the inattentive. And one of the other things that she had suggested for me, she said, check out. She said one of the things that she has found, and that is that and I think this is her personally too, was that there's an ADD medication called Vyvanse. It's the newest generation. It was Ritalin and what was it? What's the
Adderall?
Adderall, exactly. And Adderall, and then Vyvanse is, I guess, the more new version. And she said, if your doctor's willing, just try it. See if it doesn't help with we're talking about the initiating tasks, to where literally you can sit there, and it's almost like being. To me, it's like a fear response, and it doesn't make sense. It's not fear as for like a wild animal coming at you, but it's just this. It's an overwhelming feeling, and it can be picking up your socks off the floor. I mean, it can be, it doesn't have to be like you are going to, create a masterpiece out of toothpicks. So it's the small thing. Well, I noticed when I started the Vyvanse that really did help that initiating things and carrying through. So I've been trying that. Seemed to be working pretty good. I'll have to see whether it's worth it in the long run. I keep sort of monitoring myself, but I know the first day I took it, it was like pretty amazing. It was like I can do anything. I mean. Was
there like when you figured out you're autistic and there was like this aha moment, was there that also with ADD?
Well, see, I was diagnosed ADD back when I was a kid.
Okay.
But it was a sort of a forgotten diagnosis because it was ADD, dyslexia, and a couple other things that the dyslexia I think I've always struggled with. But the ADD, you kind of hear that, adults still suffer from it, but it's like, well, I'm okay. It hasn't bothered me since I was a kid. So I forgot about it. And, but no, it was the other characteristics of autism that were what was a revelation. And I still say today, it was the most amazing experience to have found that. It was just like, it's like I passed through.
Like a rebirth.
It was, but I mean, physiologically and everything else, it was a change. I mean, it was like my whole body. It was like my whole neurological system was waiting for that moment. It really was. It was that big of a change. It was like some psychological block that was completely just gone. And it was like a dam breaking. And all of a sudden, all of these feelings and all this information and started flooding into my system. And for, for the first 3 months, I was so cranked on adrenaline that my heart went into atrial fibrillation. My pulse rate was staying between 130 and 150 for all day, all night.
Goodness.
And I went into my doctor. This is how the whole thing for the diagnosis started. And this was probably, in February I was diagnosed. It probably took about 3 weeks or so to get in to see so it was probably about 3 weeks to 4 weeks after I found the answer that I was in for something else, and I was going to mention this to him. And when it was because my heart rate, that's what it was. So we were talking about that, and I love my doctor. He was listening to it, he goes, "You're staying below 150 beats per minute, and it's symmetrical." He said, that indicates to me that this is an adrenaline problem. And I just went, holy, I said, okay, I was going to bring this up, but I'm going to bring this up right now. And I said, this was like one of those moments, I just started bawling. I just started crying. I said, I found this out, and I think he was sort of taken back, but he immediately was like, didn't think it was weird. Says, okay, this is what we need to do. He says, I got to figure out now whether we need to go to see a counselor, or if you need to go get a neuropsych eval. He said, what would be your best chances of, what's the easiest route for us to tackle this? And this is the kind of guy he is. He talks out loud. He tells you what he's thinking, why he's thinking it. He said, okay, I want you to go see a neuropsychologist to do a clinical evaluation, and he didn't skip a beat. He's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to figure this out. And that's how that unfolded for me. But then we started looking into my heart more. And once things started to settle down, and this is a strange on the side thing, was that there's a vitamin supplement that Carol had suggested that there was something in that kept my heart. I started getting more arrhythmias. And
what was the supplement?
And we found out that it was a supplement. Matter of fact, they went to the cardiologist because I had run out of it. I was at the end of the month or whatever that I had started taking it. And as I was running out of it, I could tell at night especially that I wasn't getting the same intensity of arrhythmias and things. And I thought, wow, because that's the only thing else I was taking. And so I said, I think it's related to this. And he kind of ignored me. And he said, well, I want you to start on this medication. This will get it under control. And I was like, no, wait. I really think this is it. So for the 3 weeks he wanted to be on the medication, I didn't take his medication either. I came back and he said, you're fine. I said, that's because I stopped that stuff I was talking about. He said, well, what was this? And he really looked into it. He said, you're perfect now. There's nothing wrong with you. So,
what was the supplement?
He looked at it and we never really figured out, but he also said, they don't have to by law tell you everything that they're putting in here. And he also said, in medicine, he said, we can tell you all the effects that one drug is going to have on you. But when you combine that with something else, it's a whole new ballgame and we're lost. So when you start adding these things on top of each other, there's so many possibilities open up that they really can't tell you what's affecting what anymore. But he was definitely, he was, I'm going to put this, he was convinced enough by what happened that he took down what this was and put it in my file. And actually my family physician said, what was it you were taking? And I said, well, it was this stuff. And he brought it up and there it was in the file. They had actually put it in my records. So it was that significant because I don't think they would have if it hadn't have been, But So yeah, we're on a similar path, my friend, and it's been good talking with you.
Yes, it's good talking to you too.
And anything, okay, if you had to, this I always like to end up this. If there was something you could say to the neurodiverse community out there, there's something you could say to the neurotypical community, what two things do you think would be important to leave them with in this conversation?
Oh man, quiz time. Oh, I didn't study enough for this. Oh, that's hard.
Okay, that's it. You don't have to feel pressured to do it, but if something comes to mind.
What? Sorry.
In a way, you've already said something to clinicians. Don't,
Yeah. I think to neurotypical people, I would just say, we're not so different from you. We're not, what you see in the media. We're not all the same. And you really need to, talk to us and get to know us before you can assume anything about us.
Mm-hmm.
To neurodiverse people, there is hope.
Yeah.
There are people like you out there. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. Find your community. Find people that appreciate you and respect you for who you are.
Yeah. And that's going to be a large part in our community, the people that do understand. This is on the side, something you're saying. I think there's two messages to the neurotypical community. And I'm wondering, I wrote something up on this. I'll send this to you, see what you think of it. But there's a part of me that's wondering, because I've worked around people with disabilities or challenges all their life, and blind, deafblind, and on and on. And what I have learned in that time period is that anybody outside of those spheres of deafness, people don't study these things unless there's a reason to. So the best we can hope is that there's going to be a very superficial knowledge of autism in specific, And what I'm wondering, and I'm just curious your opinion on this, and that is, yes, we are people. We're neurologically different. That's all. But that is a huge difference. Because I sort of want to emphasize the difference too, because I don't want them to think of, oh, you're just neurotypical with autism added. That they need to see, wait. No. We process everything different. We process socialization, communication, time, information management. We can be biologically different. I wonder if is it better for them to approach us with that, oh, okay, I'm almost rather them have a question mark on their head instead of false expectations, or because you hear it all the time. It's like, well, you come on. It's just like we were talking about initiating different tasks and things. It's like, well, come on, just do it. It's like, well, you don't get it. Yeah. You don't get it. It's and everything's like that. It's like you don't get it. This is not. It's like me asking I don't know, a claustrophobic person to jump into a coffin. It's like the claustrophobic person. Like, wait, no, you just don't get it. I can't do it. And that's the same. And how do we? That's the gap that we need to bridge in understanding. It's not enough to say, when they talk about autism awareness, it's like it's more than just. I don't think they're approaching it right. And I'm not saying I'm right either, but it's like there's something deeper. There's a different understanding that the general public needs to have before I think we can get the accommodations we need to work and to socialize and do the things that the way that we need to do them. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess when I said that, you interpreted it a different way. What I meant was, like, that we're not so different from you. It's like, you know, we all just want to be loved. We're still people. We have emotions. We still, I don't know, want to have a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Like, yes, we are different in a lot of ways, but we're still, you know, we still all want
Well, I agree with
the same
you.
thing.
I do.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
You know, I think that's the way I did take it. But I guess I'm sort of posing that there's that dilemma there. It's like, okay, yes, basically we all have the same needs. We just do them in different ways. We just that's our challenge. And that's what and I just say to everybody that's listening to this video, you know, we all have that responsibility of being teachers, and expanding the awareness and knowledge of what autism is. And that's what I think, that's where the changes are going to come from. It's not going to be from the professional communities. It's not going to be from the neurotypicals with good intentions. It's going to be us getting out there saying, you know, that's like when we were talking about Sarah Agoniati. She's out there. She's cutting on the cutting edge of all this, you know, and that's why I support her and all those that are, you know, that get out there and say, okay, this is me, and I'm going to be me.
Yeah, what you said earlier about, like, people looking into autism, they won't really do it unless they have a reason to.
Uh-huh.
And I think most people probably don't think they know anybody that's autistic, but they actually do. So I think we do have to speak up and say, yeah, this is me, and you need to understand it more. Otherwise, they're not going to care.
Yeah, and that's kind of our fault. I mean, there's no wonder, because basically we're just coming of an age, and we really are that we can come out because we're finding each other, and it's starting, and the truth is starting to be revealed about how broad of a spectrum it is, and people like you and me there, and everything around, you know. So, well, cool. I think this was a good interview, and I really thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, when we can do this again sometime if we come up with more information here or something we want to talk about. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll get this out on YouTube ASAP.